Let us understand. So far we have discussed the beginning of world history, right? So from which topics does the world history starts? कहाँ से start होता है? Enlightenment. Just like UPSC की preparation. हाँ? Online students, am I audible? So far we have discussed the syllabus of world history. Within world history, there are few things which all of you need to understand. The most important thing, the areas from where UPSC asks questions. Like in the first class, I discussed about the role of Rousseau. Question aa gaya? Only on the basis of NCERT class, you can answer that. It's that easy. So we have to understand what is the meaning of enlightenment. That we have done already. Then we discussed about what is the difference between socialism and communism. UPSC again asked a question on this year again. Karl Marx, what was the role of Frederick Engels? So Frederick Engels, he was a friend, है ना? कई बार होता है ना कि दो दोस्तों ने साथ में मिलकर थीसिस बनाया, but eventually only one was able to get the credit for that, है ना? So that was the specific condition during the time of spread of communism. All right, let us try to understand the remaining syllabus. पहले एक बार syllabus देखते हैं. So we have discussed enlightenment as well as modern ideas. When we talk about modern idea, it's more about the ideas which govern today's society. So all the important ideas, they reflect our preamble. Preamble सबको याद है? So it is just the preamble which talks about the modern ideas of today's society. We have to see what kind of political, economic, social, cultural ideas dominate today's society. बस उन्हीं को इसी के साथ we have to just do the collaboration, उसको समझ लेना. There are two important philosophers, Kant and Rousseau. So question when they come in world history, 1 year UPSC is going to ask Rousseau, next year they switch to Kant. Okay, so for next year I would always say कि भाई Kant के ऊपर ज़्यादा focus करो. Alright, or if a question comes from Rousseau, this is going to come in a different dimension. Okay, so there are some methods through which we can predict question, and this is one method for that. Rise of socialist ideas. UPSC has asked many questions. What was the composition of the utopian philosophy? When we talk about utopian, it means the early part of socialism which could not create any specific impact. Okay, they were trying to create, the certain changes can be done in the capitalistic structure of the society so that the health of the workers or the health of the working class can be improved. But this could not be done. That's why it remains utopian ideas. And when they were these ideas were changed by a combination of Frederick Engels and Karl Marx, that led to the rise of communism. Okay, we have already discussed about this. What was industrialization? Why industrialization started in England in the first place? What was its impact? Okay, and how industrialization has happened in the various other countries. We have already seen all of that. All right. Then we also discussed about the origin of modern politics. What is the concept of nation state? When the territorial boundaries act as the cultural boundaries, when they become same, it leads to the creation of nation state. This nation state system starts from Europe. Okay, from there the earliest जो आपके nation state हैं, they are France and England. These two are the earliest nation state. Okay, and by 18th century we realized that some of these nation states, they were not stable enough to govern their countries, and the first revolution, the first important revolution in European history, it starts in France. Okay, in 1789 we see the beginning of French Revolution. This French Revolution is very important for us as a topic because UPSC asks a lot of questions from here, and many of these topics which we see, they are one or the other way directly linked to it. Then along with this, if we see the new world, the world is divided into two worlds, old world and new world. Old world, it's all about Asia, okay, and Europe. New world, where people settled during the Middle Ages, and that is America. Okay, so we discussed that a revolution started there. Some colonies were created. There were 13 to be precise. Okay, by the middle of 18th century, they started a revolution against their colonial power, that is Britain. Okay, and that's how we see the beginning of American Revolution. We have also discussed that. Okay, then we have discussed about the Reform Act. We also discussed about the nationalism. What is nationalism eventually? Okay, nationalism just means when the various approaches of a nation, they start converging. All right, when different communities, they start thinking that they share a common heritage and their future is converged. This is when we say the rise of nationalism. This nationalism was born in France in 18th century, when France was under attack from the other European country. This is what we see, the rise of nationalism. This nationalism then got percolated in two important countries of Europe. One was Germany, other was Italy. We discussed about this also. All right. So अभी तक हमने इतना ही लगभग cover किया. This is the part which we have specifically covered so far. Okay. Then we discussed little bit of conversation with respect to World War. All right. कि how we have reached the World War eventually. Today we will be discussing about some other important topics along with these lines. Okay. So let us understand what is British democratic politics all about. ये हमने discuss किया था ये वाला? नहीं किया था ना? So we have discussed about industrialization. As a result of industrialization, the world starts moving. Okay, people had to migrate from villages to cities, like we do for education, good education. But at that point of time, it was for new employment opportunities which came in these cities. Okay, so cities, they are always more attractive than villages because of their economic prowess. है ना, वहाँ पे ज़्यादा पैसा मिलता है. So that's why what started happening in England specifically, as Industrial Revolution matured. Okay, so from 1750 by 1820s, around 70 years had passed on, and there were creation of n number of cities in England. Now, what was the biggest problem was these villages were having representation. As we know, there are two houses in England. Okay, House of Lords and House of Commons. Okay, this House of Lords, that consisted of various feudal class. Okay, House of Lords. So these were the two houses, Lords and Commons. So maximum of this representation, okay, this was in the villages, in both the houses. Because of this, eventually, when people started moving towards cities, they realized they do not have any political right. Okay, because the right to vote, it was linked to certain property qualification and certain geographical locations. Concentration was in villages rather than in cities. So during this point of time, a movement started which wanted, first of all, political representation. Then this was the time, because of Industrial Revolution, we had seen rise of middle class. This middle class was now wealthy, but still it was not having any specific representation in both the houses. Okay. Third, 1830. This was the year of revolution in Europe. We had already discussed about the revolution of 1830. Okay. Some changes were done in the constitution. Okay. In the constitution of France, and because of this, France revolted in 1830. And after that, large number of other countries, they also revolted at the same time. Because of this specifically, even England was under pressure. okay, in 18 after 1830, that some reforms should be done, otherwise a revolution may start in England itself. All right, and this was the time when there was also change of monarchy. Okay, and then the monarchy which came in power, it was more liberal. Because of all these factors, Reform Act of 1832 was passed. And UPSC asked a question on this year itself. This is one topic जहाँ से काफी साल हो गए थे क्वेश्चन पूछे हुए. So they asked how this Reform Act of 1832 led to constitutional development in Britain. Okay, so when we talk about constitutional developments, as per this Reform Act, right to vote was given to the people in cities. Representation of the middle class, it increased in the House of Commons. Okay, this was done then, but still it could not lead to reforms on a large scale. At this point of time, many demands were being generated within Britain, and those demands wanted equal constituency, all of you know what ballot system? Okay, ballot system, they said that the voting should be by ballot. Previously they used to be different voting days, so they said voting should be done in a single day. Salary should be paid to MPs. Okay, so these were the various political reforms which are eyed by the political classes or the middle class at that point of time. Alright, and even though majority of these reforms were not done by the Reform Act of 1832, but 1832 started a process which eventually led to achieving these targets in the future, like equal constituency, ballot act of 1872. Okay, voting was limited to single day by the end of the 19th century. All these reforms were being done by the British in a very peaceful manner. Once UPSC asked this question, why no revolution happened in Britain?
only India एक colony of India को पड़ा है
This was just trying to reform the political structure of Britain. का मेन एम ब्रिटेन के ऊपर ही था, बाकियों पे इतना वो नहीं था. इंडिया वाला एक्ट अलग है, जैसे इंडिया में भी 1833 देखे हुआ विद एन एक्ट, ओके, बट दैट वाज डिफरेंट फ्रॉम दिस. दैट वाज फॉर द गवर्नेंस ऑफ ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी, but this act was for the sake of the political structure of Britain. Like from this time onwards, 1832, the House of Commons, like India में भी क्या है, which house dominates? Lower house, है ना, लोकसभा dominate करता है. Similarly, their House of Commons started dominating, and these House of Lords में जो थे, these people were not elected. Okay, many of them they were feudal lords. Okay, so this reform of 1832 changed the hands of sovereignty from feudal lords all the way up to middle class. So this was the biggest impact. Because of this act of 1832, political activities increased. Okay, people started creating political parties. Okay, they started electioneering. All of you know at the time of voting क्या चलता है, जब भी इलेक्शन आते क्या करते हैं political parties, है ना, सिर्फ फ्रीबीज नहीं, दे विल कम टू योर हाउस की रजिस्टर करा लो, रजिस्टर नहीं हो रखा यार, आपने वोट कैसे करोगे, इट्स अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पॉलिटिकल राइट, एवरीबडी इज इक्वल इन इंडिया, ठीक है, ऑल दोस थिंग्स स्टार्ट. सो दीज थिंग्स स्टार्टेड इन इंग्लैंड फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम आफ्टर 1832. ओके, देयर दीज पॉलिटिकल पार्टी, देयर टू पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज, कंजर्वेटिव्स एंड लेबर, दीज आर द टू. उनकी बिगिनिंग यहीं से स्टार्ट होती है. सो वंस यूपीएससी आस्क्ड द क्वेश्चन इन 2014 दैट द बिगिनिंग ऑफ द main modern political system of the world, it starts from 1832, because ये political parties का यहीं से start हुआ था. These political parties started various political activities like electioneering. They started registering voters. Voters को भी register करना था, ठीक है? So all these activities starts from this act of 1832 and this was further reformed in the coming years ना 1867 में reform किया, 1884 में reform किया, 1927 में again it was reformed. That's why the beginning of the constitutional reforms in England, it starts with the act of 1832. Now the second question, why revolutions have not happened in Britain? When we say about revolution, we talk about large scale violent revolutions like we have seen in every country. ठीक है, इटली में देख लिया, फ्रांस में देख लिया, जर्मनी में देख लिया, हर जगह देख लिया. Why it did not happen in Britain? कैसे कारण नहीं होता है? So there can be n number of factors. One is they have always think in gradual reforms. ठीक है, जैसे ब्रिटिश के साथ एक माइंडसेट है, रिफॉर्म शुड बी ग्रेजुअल. इंडिया की फ्रीडम मूवमेंट देखो, धीरे धीरे करके रिफॉर्म लाए, ठीक है, तो रेवोल्यूशन से बचा लेते हैं. सो व्हाट दे डू, दे बिलीव इन ग्रेजुअलिज्म. ऑलराइट, सो ग्रेजुअल रिफॉर्म्स, इट्स नॉट लाइक दे विल से कि हम करेंगे ही नहीं, दे विल गो फॉर रिफॉर्म्स. लाइक यू सॉ व्हेन पोर्चुगीज दे वर बीइंग आउस्टेड फ्रॉम इंडिया, पुलिस को बुलाना पड़ा. ऑलराइट, बट ड्यूरिंग द लास्ट ईयर्स ब्रिटिश कितने अच्छे बच्चे की तरह कर रहे थे, प्लीज पावर ले लो, ठीक है. So that shows that these people believe in gradual reforms. Second is the mindset of people of Britain. They're very conservative. Conservative in the sense they respect their monarchy. है ना? They respect their monarchy. They do not want change. When Queen died, we people cannot relate with England in any manner. We say कि भाई Queen की तो death हुई है. Why are you crying so much? What is the reason for that? But for them, they are conservative because their monarchy has served them well. This monarchy since 1688, it has been a constitutional monarchy. Alright, and in general, since they believe in this monarchy, they are also against large scale violence. This should not be done. So the era of 17, 18, 19th century, they did not have any specific revolution in their own society. Even though they were the largest colonial power and they were fighting in other lands, they were not fighting in their own country. इनके छोटे मोटे रिवोल्ट हुए, but that is because of their internal problems कि Irish versus English, Scotland versus English. But if we see overall society, they have more or less been able to maintain large amount of peace. ठीक है, even though ऐसे क्वेश्चन पूछे नहीं जाएंगे, but you should understand the context. Okay. So this origin of modern politics, one topic is British democratic politics and the specific time period is 1815 to 1850. After that is parliamentary reformers, free traders, and then finally comes the Chartists. These Chartists, these were nothing but these were the movements of working class. Okay, the working class started feeling cheated from 1832 onwards because majority of the demand, like you can see in House of Commons, who got the representation? It was middle class. Okay, it was not the working class. Working class has fought shoulder to shoulder along with the middle class, but they did not get anything out in return because in this reform act property qualification was kept कि जिसका income 10 pounds से ज़्यादा होगा, that person is going to get the right to vote. Okay, and that was not with the working class. They were suffering at that point of time. Property was required to have the voting powers. So that's why they started the Chartist movement along with 5-6 specific demands. Okay, and from 1838 all the way up to 1848, for 10 years they were very active. And one of the major form for these Chartists, they used to get the signatures, है ना, कि signature sign करवा के लेके आते थे. So there were 3 specific years, 1838, 42 and 48. In these 3 years specifically, they were very active. But the problem with them, forgery कराते थे. Okay, so एक ने तो साइन मार दिया क्वीन का, ठीक है. So that happened in the Chartist movement. So this Chartist movement again is important because it is the first working class movement in the whole of world. Okay, in the whole of world, not only in Britain. This is the time period. They came up with 6 specific demands. That's why it is known as charter. 6 demands were there in the charter. Like we have already discussed, The Reform Act of 1832 did not lead to creation of secret ballot. That was one of the demand. Okay, salary for MPs, that was also demand of the Chartist. Okay, they also demand specifically election every year. Now this was a bit of a peculiar demand. हर साल अगर इलेक्शन करेंगे तो कैसे जिएंगे, right? So election should be conducted every 1 year's interval. Then after that they specifically said salary should be given to MPs, right to vote should be given to everyone, secret ballot, okay. So all such demand were put forward by them. इन्होंने एक चार्टर बनाया 3 specific years. 2 to 3 million signatures, and they used to send their demand to the parliament, but every time the parliament rejected their demands. Okay, but the question which comes on this is how Chartist movement, even though it failed because government was very repressive in nature. They did not allow the demands of these Chartists. And second was they also resorted to violence. Once you are violent, suppression increases. The use of violence. Third, ideology was not clear. Some of the leaders of these Chartists, like O'Connor, they could not create a forge. ना वही आके जाके सबको शांति से बैठा के समझाया जाए कि हमारी डिमांड ये है. दे शुड बी शेपिंग ऑफ पॉलिटिकल ओपिनियन. यू कैन नॉट जस्ट थिंक ऑफ कि हाँ ठीक है आज से ये कर दो वो कर दो. बिकॉज ऑफ ऑल दीज फीचर्स दिस चार्टिस्ट मूवमेंट फेल्ड, बट ऑल इट्स डिमांड्स कैन एक्सेप्ट वन. दिस डिमांड वाज नॉट एक्सेप्टेड ना. इट कैन नॉट बी एक्सेप्टेड. इफ यू सी आज की मॉडर्न डेमोक्रेसी अगर हम देखें, अगर हर साल इलेक्शन होने लग जाए, व्हाट विल हैपन टू आवर कंट्री, है ना. वी आर फेसिंग द इश्यू वन कंट्री वन इलेक्शन. असेंबली इलेक्शन के साथ तो हम इसे देखा नहीं जाता. इफ एवरी एनुअल ईयर दे आर गोइंग टू बी इलेक्शन, it will not lead to any good governance specifically because the government will always be in the election mode. यही डिमांड्स थी. एक दो डिमांड और डाला हुआ था इन्होंने. ठीक है, 6 डिमांड थी. एक इलेक्शन वाला हो गया, सैलरी वाला हो गया, राइट टू वोट, सीक्रेट बैलेट. ऑलराइट, इसके अलावा भी इन्होंने दो तीन चीजें बोली हुई थी. वही इक्वल कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी शुड बी देयर. अभी आप बेसिक बस समझ लो, बाद में हम हैंडआउट्स के साथ में बैठ के आराम से सारा चीज करेंगे. ठीक है, इट्स जस्ट अबाउट मेकिंग यू फेमिलियर विद दीज टॉपिक्स बिकॉज वंस विल स्टार्ट विद द क्लासेस फ्रॉम थर्ड, इवेंचुअली विल कवर ईच एंड एवरी टॉपिक. सो दिस इज जस्ट फॉर द सेक ऑफ हाँ सिलेबस पता है, वी नो द सिलेबस. लाइक इफ यू सी अबाउट दिस ब्रिटिश डेमोक्रेटिक पॉलिटिक्स, मोस्टली इट इज नॉट कवर्ड इन योर एनसीईआरटीज. अच्छे से कवर ही नहीं किया जाता है, बट इट इज इन योर सिलेबस, सो यू शुड नो अबाउट इट. ऑलराइट, now we were discussing about First World War. So why did the First World War started? Okay, we know the best book for world history is going to be Ranjan Chakrabarty. For covering historiography, you just read this book. It covers a lot of important topics. Okay. Anyway, so First World War, it was fought between two powers. We had the Triple Alliance versus Triple Entente. This Triple Entente was signed between Britain, France, and Russia. Okay, and this was signed between Austria-Hungary, Germany, and Italy. Italy was a very weak power. Okay, Italy was a very weak power. That's why when this World War starts in 1914, they are going to sign an independent treaty with England by 1915 and left the war. That's why if you'll read in books, mostly it will be written dual alliance because Italy eventually left the alliance in the middle of the war. Okay, so when we talk about First World War, there were n number of factors which were responsible for the First World War. Okay, there were different categories of nations in Europe. the biggest issue used to be Eastern question. Have you seen the map of Europe? West, everybody knows the country of the West. है ना, सबको पता है, France, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, these are the important countries. Towards the east, there are so many countries. है ना, उनका नाम भी नहीं पता चलता. Many of these places what happen, they do not even get the recognition. Somebody say they are from Slovakia, some say no, I am from Slovenia. Okay, so these are the kind of thing which happen these people. The same situation was there in the end of the 19th and early 20th century. These countries, because of the forces of nationalism, and we had already discussed about the fight which had started between Germany and France. At the time of unification of Germany, the last battle was Battle of Sedan, which was fought in 1870. In 1871, they signed one treaty known as Treaty of Frankfurt. Okay, this Treaty of Frankfurt was signed, and from 1871 onwards, Germany and France, they were completely on the opposite sides, and we had discussed the policy of Bismarck. Okay, and his main aim was to isolate France, that France should not get any friend. At this point of time, Britain, it was following the policy of golden isolation. The only power, Austria-Hungary and Russia, since both of them, they were having divergent interests, they could not come under one grouping. But having said that, Bismarck signed dual alliance treaty with Austria-Hungary, alright, in which year? भूल गए? 1879, alright, and they signed the triple alliance in 1882. Okay, so by that time they had created a grouping between Germany, Austria-Hungary and Italy. But Russia could not sign a treaty until and unless Austria-Hungary is in the alliance. Alright, this was the main reason, because Austria-Hungary was having majority of the nationalities of Eastern Europe. They were within the confines of Austria-Hungary, and Russia used to support the disintegration of these important principalities. Okay, there was a race known as slave. Okay, slave race, and Russia used to consider it as the champion of slave race. One more country which was relatively strong in eastern part was Serbia. Okay, so Serbia was more or less wanted some territories in Eastern Europe which were also eyed by Austria-Hungary. So all of us know in 1908, Austria-Hungary captured Bosnia. At this point of time, Serbia became completely against Austria-Hungary. Serbia wanted an international conference. They wanted there should be an international conference so that we can discuss the Bosnian question, but nothing happened. In 1908, Serbia also wanted help from Russia, but Russia could not do so because Russia had got defeated by Japan in 1905. This was the situation of the opening years of 20th century, where all these countries, Serbia, along with that, Albania, Bosnia, all these countries, they were fighting for the same territory. Okay, Bulgaria, all these countries are fighting for same territory. This territory should be under our control. Because of these factors, eventually a rivalry was developing. Russia could not help Serbia in 1908. Okay, so eventually, as all of you know, it led to the creation of Balkan Wars. These Balkan Wars were fought in which year? From 1911 to 30. Okay, these were the year when two Balkan Wars were fought. Okay, and this did not satisfy the aspiration of any of the country. Because of this incident of Bosnia being controlled by Austria-Hungary in 1914, French Ferdinand, okay, he was the Archduke of Austria-Hungary and he was traveling in Sarajevo. Okay, Sarajevo was the capital of Bosnia and he was killed. Franz Ferdinand was killed by Gavril Princip. He was a Serb revolutionary extremist बोल रहे या terrorist बोल रहे, depends upon you. Anyway, so once French Ferdinand was killed on 28th of June, some demands were put forward by Austria-Hungary, which could not be fulfilled by Serbia. So by 28th of July, we see the beginning of war between Serbia and Austria-Hungary. On 28th of July, it was not a world war. It was just a war between Austria-Hungary and Serbia. But at this point of time, 29th July, Russia came in. Russia mobilized in favor of Serbia. Because, as all of us understand, Austria-Hungary was a major power and it could have completely finished off Serbia. So it got support from Russia. Alright. Once Russia started supporting Serbia, Austria-Hungary was having alliance with Germany. So Germany had to come in. So Germany came in by 1st of August. Alright. Once Germany came along with Austria-Hungary, and whenever Germany comes, Germany का एक बहुत clear होता है. First, we are going to fight with France for no reason, but we should fight. Okay, so alongside they started fighting with France. Now this became the alliance: Russia, Serbia, and France, and this side Austria-Hungary and Germany. All right. At this point of time, Britain, which was following the policy of golden isolation, now this has to decide कि किसके side जाना है. All right. And as all of us know, they were bound by triple entente. So Britain also, and this Britain came for one specific reason: Germany violated the neutrality of Belgium. Belgium is a very small country, but Germany uses Belgium as a gateway to France because it is a low country. It's very easy to navigate from there. So once the neutrality of Belgium was violated, France was supported by Britain, and this is how we see the beginning of World War. Often अभी पढ़ेंगे when we'll discuss these topics in detail in optional, we'll discuss there are lots of controversies. The biggest controversy is nobody wanted a world war, but still the world war happened. What was the reason for that? Okay, and we have to find the factors, and the biggest problem was with the system of alliances. This system of alliances was created by Bismarck. Peacetime military alliances was something new which the world had never seen. Alright, it had never seen, and because of this we see the rise of these. Alright, so because of these alliance system, eventually it turned into a world war. Later on they were also get help from Ottoman Empire. Okay, because Austria-Hungary, since Austria-Hungary was against the Eastern powers like Serbia, and those had fought the Balkan Wars with Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire thought of supporting Germany as well as Austria-Hungary, or they are also known as Central Powers. Alright, so because of these factors, we see the rise of First World War. Alright, this year UPSC asked one question of the Roaring 20s. Okay, and this was related to the outcome of First World War. So when we talk about First World War, it starts in 1914. One major events happen in 1917, and then the peace treaties are signed in 1917. Russia, it withdraws, right? Because of, yes, Bolshevik Revolution. So Lenin won the revolution in Russia, and because of that, Russia withdrew. Okay, it signed a treaty with Germany. Okay, after that in 1919, Germany surrendered, but there is one important distinction for Germany. Germany was not defeated. उसकी टेरिटरी में किसी ने आके पैर भी नहीं रखा था, and Germany had surrendered. Because of this, the whole capacity of German military, it was in place. Why we think after First World War, why Second World War was again started by Germany? One of the initial factors, their military was in place. All the military infrastructure, it was in place. Okay, their soldiers were not demoralized. they had surrender. This surrender was done by Weimar Republic, and from this time onwards they were ridiculed, okay, as backstabbers. Okay, so Weimar Republic was the government which signed the treaty in 1990. This treaty was Treaty of Versailles. This treaty became one of the most controversial treaty in the history of the world. Okay, all of you know this Treaty of Versailles. One of the biggest problem was war guilt. All the war, है ना, जितना भी guilt था of this war, it was put on Germany. Even though we can see that the war started between Austria-Hungary as well as Serbia. Mobilization was done by Russia and then Germany entered. But the whole war guilt, it was put on Germany. Then war reparation. Around 6.6 billion pound. This was put on Germany. Okay, Germany was divided into two parts. Okay, east and west, and the main reason was to provide Polish corridor. Okay, all of you know Poland is a landlocked country. Okay, since Poland is a landlocked country, Germany इसके ऊपर आता है, ठीक है? So they were provided access to the Baltic Sea. This is known as Polish corridor. Okay, and this was such a big thing to ask from Germany, and this is the reason why Hitler is going to start a war. This was the reason why Hitler invaded Poland, because this was a compromise which was done by the peacemakers of Paris. Okay, so they said कि ऐसा कौन करता है यार कि suppose अब किसी country को, मान लो नेपाल को access चाहिए सी तक का, तो are you going to provide a way like this? Nobody is going to accept. Okay, this is complete violation of someone's sovereignty as well as territory. This was the Polish corridor which was given to them. Some of the ports of Germany, like Danzig port, they were internationalized, open, free for everyone. Okay, people cannot cross this road from west to east. They have to come by sea. Such kind of conditions were put on Germany. Alright, and we think why Germany felt humiliated. This was the reason. And on the top of it, this treaty was signed in the Palace of Versailles. This was the palace in which the unification of Germany was announced in 1871. So UPSC ने एक क्वेश्चन पूछा था that 1871 it was the year of happiness for Germany, and 1919 it was the year of chastisement, जहाँ मतलब बिल्कुल पकड़ के खत्म कर दिया. Alright, so we need to understand कि 1871 to 1919 what circumstances, what was beautiful in this year and what was so different in 1919. Okay, so this is what the different kind of things, all the territories, है ना, इनके पास जितना भी colonial territory था, that was divided among the Britain, France, Russia, all of them. Russia ने तो बाद में neglect कर दिया because they had done the Bolshevik Revolution. That was eventually they did not accept. But all the these were the conditions which were put on Germany. Because of these factors, the government which signed the treaty, known as Weimar Republic, they were discredited as backstabbers because their military had never been defeated. Military remained undefeated. देखो यार, you can surrender without getting defeated. Defeated means when totally you know कि भाई ठीक है खत्म होने वाले हैं. But at that point of time, once they signed the treaty, this created a very big problem for Germany. It was not possible for them to either pay. They couldn't pay the money. Some of their territory it was taken over by France. Okay, as all of you know, there was territory of Rhineland. This was demilitarized. है ना? Area like Ruhr. So because of this, we see rise of People like Hitler. Germany was going through hyperinflation. Okay, hyperinflation means you're spending thousands of rupees just for buying one piece of bread. This became the problem. The concept of hyperinflation has come, and Germany is one of the peak example of that. Hyperinflation. Along with this, there was one condition which was put on Germany. They can only their police force was limited to 1 lakh, whole country, 1 lakh. Okay, so 1 lakh people, how can they take care of law and order? Okay, these things were put. Because of this, law and order, it came in very bad shape. So country was suffering because of their foreign policy, by accepting Treaty of Versailles, because of hyperinflation, because of lack of law and order. So they wanted a savior, and that savior came in the name of Hitler. Okay, we see the rise of Hitler. Hitler had fought in the First World War. Okay, he was a mere soldier. He was not even having a very big, powerful rank in general. He was just a normal soldier, and he surrendered. Okay, when he came back, and then he became a legend. All of you know he was a very powerful orator. Okay, and since he was a very powerful orator, he was able to change everything in Germany. He had a very specific policy, and that specific policy was of creating war goods. As all of you know, whenever there is problem in economy, जब भी war goods हम बनाते हैं, you do not require demand. Why? Because everything is procured by the government itself. So that's why you can say manufacture as much as possible. Because of this, he was able to solve the problems of economy of Germany, and at the same time, specifically, Hitler started violating the treaty provisions. Okay, whichever treaty provisions were put under Treaty of Versailles, he started repudiating them. उनको break करना start कर दिया. Because of these factors, Germany again became a powerful state by 1938. Very powerful state. When Hitler was rising, Britain and France, they were in a dilemma. What to do, what not to do. Okay, because they realized that the provisions of Treaty of Versailles, they were indeed harsh. So some of the demands of Hitler, they were genuine. So they kept on giving one thing after the other. That is known as the policy of appeasement. Okay, which includes territory. Like Czechoslovakia का पूरा Sudetenland उनको provide कर दिया. All right, Munich Pact, all of you should know about that. Okay, they signed Munich Pact. He was able to take over Austria. So all the important things he was able to do, because Britain and France, on the one hand, they were not war ready, and on the other hand, they said that some of the demands of Germans, they were genuine. Because of these factors, it's led to the rise of Hitler even in the foreign policy, okay, or on the international front. Because of this, when he started invasion of Poland in 1939, he was thinking that nobody is going to come and fight with me. But at this point of time, warning had come from Britain. Britain has said, if you are going to invade Poland, it will lead to World War. He invaded, and that led to the World War. The World War starts from 1939, okay, till 1941. This World War was limited to Europe. Okay, this was limited to Europe. As usual, Germany started. Then war was declared by Britain. The moment it declared, Germany started fighting with France for no reason. है ना? Just like before कि भाई तुम हमारे पड़ोसी हो, एक बार let us meet. All right. They also violated the neutrality of Belgium. So initially they were very successful, and Germany, they had signed a pact with Russia, and that is known as Molotov Pact. Under that, there was mutual non-aggression with Russia. So initially, even Hitler did not invade Russia. Okay. Then in 1941, all of us know that Japan entered war. They attacked Pearl Harbor, and that brought USA into the war. USA also entered. So USA entered from the side of Britain and France. Same time, Hitler also started war on Soviet Union, because of which an alliance was created between capitalism and communism for the temporary period. And they created this alliance by 1944. In fact, for defeating German, the maximum credit should go to USSR. It was not USA. Okay, from 1942 till 1944, for 2 years, USSR was pleading with USA, open the second front. Okay, if you see the map of Europe, फ्रांस के नीचे क्या है? स्पेन है ना, फ्रांस के नीचे स्पेन आता है. So they wanted to open this front, but this front was not opened by USA or from Europe, because they thought at least let Germany fight with USSR. That will lead to decline of communism. Okay, that will lead to decline. So this is the issue of second front. It is from this part, this issue of second front, we see the beginning of Cold War in full throttle mode. And in 1944, all of the Eastern Europe, this will be captured by USSR, because after defeating Germany, their whole playground was empty. So they started controlling the eastern part of Europe from 1944 onwards. That's why in 1945, as all of you know, the atomic bomb. These atomic bombs were just kind of a warning to USSR. They were thrown on Japan, but the main enemy was USSR. Alright, because they thought if you will not stop your aggression, we can throw this also on you. But they could not do it directly. This was the main reason. Japan ka bombing ka aur koi reason nahi tha, because by that time they had even accepted कि we are going to surrender in the coming months. कि by November we'll surrender, but उससे पहले इन्होंने ये start कर दिया. ठीक है, so this is a brief story which you should understand कि why these world wars happened in the first place. If you are going to see the UPSC syllabus, the UPSC asks the question, what is total war? When we talk about total war, it means the whole capacity of a nation is used for fighting the war. This is the meaning of total war. So when we talk about First World War, at this point of time, all the people within the country, they participated. And that participation included all the sections of the society. Okay, so men, they went to the war front. Women, they took care of the elderly as well as hospital. Okay, diplomats, they create alliances. Secret services, they seek crucial information for fighting strategy. So in this manner, whole of the country, they are coming behind their nation. Okay, and that's why it is known as the concept of total war. This total war concept was given by General Ludendorff, and he has written a book known as Total War. And UPSC has asked this question, why First World War is considered as a total war. So in a total war, there, other than the participation, there are other important things, like it is considered as a war of attrition. What is the meaning of war of attrition? Until you break, we are going to fight. Okay, creation of trenches warfare start हुआ था, ठीक है? Similarly, use of chemical weapons, all these things. So that's why overall they are considered as a total war. Alright, because of these reasons, and this concept of total war can be applied to both first as well as second. Second में आपको पता होगा, on large scale even Britain was invaded, okay, in the Second World War. So that's why these two are known as World War. Then comes the societal implication. So this year when UPSC asked you a question about the Roaring Twenties, it was from the societal implications of First World War as well as Second. Okay, one of the important outcome of this was emancipation of women. because since they became part of the public life by going to hospitals, by taking care of people, by taking part in economic activities, because there were no one else to take care of them. All right, because they realize the importance of health. They realize that the only activity is not to bear or not to have children. They realize that they have something else. They realize they should also have political power. So because of First World War, one of the important outcome was emancipation of women. Throughout 1920s, both in USA as well as Europe, we are going to see reforms with respect to right to vote, okay, with respect to autonomy over their own bodies, all right, right to public employment, all these things, they became part of the life of women. Okay, this is an important societal implication. Along with this, after First World War, there was one important societal impact, that is, before First World War, all the countries of Europe, they had a attitude of militarism. They used to think we should fight a big war so that can lead to some solutions. Okay, no? This was the attitude of militarism. Wars are good. And all of you have read about Hitler, that human has progressed in war, and they'll die in peace. Okay, so this is the specific attitude of militarism. So the interwar period from 1919 till 1939, these 20 years, the Western countries, specifically Britain and France, there was an attitude against the war, and this was one of the main reasons why they accepted the policy of appeasement. So when UPSC asked you this question, or the societal implications of the World War, there are different kinds of dimensions, okay, which we'll discuss in the classes. We have already discussed the causes, all right. The First World War consequences. फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर का जो सबसे बड़ा बेनिफिट है, इट गोज टू यूएसए. इन 1914 दे वर हैविंग 10% शेयर इन द वर्ल्ड ट्रेड. बाय 1919 इट बिकेम 20%. इट डबल्ड. हम भी हर साल अपनी एक्सपोर्ट का ग्रोथ वो लेके आते हैं, इस बार इतना एक्सपोर्ट करेंगे, इस बार ये करेंगे, वो करेंगे, बट यूएसए डिड इट फ्रॉम 14 टू 19, डबल कर लिया अपना परसेंटेज इन द वर्ल्ड. सो दैट वाज द इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ लेबर, concept of welfare state, okay, as well as the partition of Africa, last phase. All of this is the outcome of First World War, all right. And the Treaty of Versailles, as we can see, that led to creation of rabid nationalism in Germany, which was the cause of Second World War. The outcome of the Second World War, specifically creation of an organization like UN. Now UN का motto क्या है? To prevent human from the scourge of war. There should not be any war. To respect the rights of man as well as right of nations. Okay, this is what we created one organization known as United Nations. One consequences we have already discussed, because of the dispute between USSR and USA over the territories of Eastern Europe. It led to the beginning of Cold War. Okay, it also led to the division of Europe, into West Europe and East Europe. There was a speech which was given by Winston Churchill, where he talked about an iron curtain has descended, from static in Baltic to Trieste in Adriatic Sea. So he talks about that specific iron curtain, to what level that iron curtain has. तो जितना भी है यही सारा है इसका आउटकम, है ना, सिलेबस में दिया हुआ. These are the consequences. Emergence of two power blocks और beginning of Cold War. Emergence of third world, NAM, और उसका क्या है, UNO. This is the impact. This is what we will discuss. All right. So all of us know two power blocks. One was USA, other was USSR. Yes.
Land will make a border.
वो क्यों चेंज क्यों करी? Because the main reason was they were having the largest empire. Britain was having the largest empire. That's why they did not want to get themselves involved in the Europe. because getting yourself involved in Europe means you are going to fight wars, and that is not good for their colonial empire. That's why उनको पता था हम आराम से मस्ती चल रही है लाइफ में, we are a very satiated country, we should not think about creating alliances, we want peace. Suppose after so much of struggle which was done by Britain by 18th century, they were at their top, why would they fight now? So they always avoided fighting with the European powers. They only fought when they had to serve their interests. Like Carnatic wars were fought in India for one reason. कि भाई इंडिया क्या रीजन था उसका उस टाइम पे, उसका मेन बताओ. हाँ मतलब जो भी वॉर्स थे, एक तो मेन रीजन क्या था, ब्रिटेन एंड फ्रांस, दीज वर द टू नेशन स्टेट्स, तो उसी के बीच में फाइट होता था. एंड द मेन रीजन ऑलवेज यूज्ड टू बी कॉलोनीज. ओके, और एक पहले वाला जो था ऑस्ट्रियन वॉर ऑफ सक्सेशन. So that's why more or less British realized कि भाई I should focus on my colonial empire, I am not going to focus on Europe. Okay, now what was done by Europe or England? What was done by England during the 19th century? The same was done, followed by USA in the first half of 20th century, when they used to say we are following the policy of golden isolation. This was the reason why they did not even join League of Nations. Okay, उन्होंने उसको join ही नहीं किया, because they were saying we are not going to get ourselves involved in other things, because अपना यहाँ पे economy boost हो रहा है, we should focus on that specifically. But because of Second World War, Europe became weak. कहाँ हुआ सबसे ज्यादा फाइटिंग, कहाँ पे हुआ था? 50% of the French industry, they got destroyed. Okay, so the maximum damage, it happened in Europe. So there was only one powerful power in Europe now, that was USSR. Okay, that's why USA had to break its policy of isolation. Okay, and this was specifically requested by UK. If we cannot fight now, we do not have the resources. Now you have to come. If you want to save capitalism, come and fight with us against USSR. Okay, and that's why one doctrine which is very famous in world history, that is known as Truman Doctrine. This Truman Doctrine was announced. Under this doctrine, they announced that wherever people or democratic people, they are getting more or less pressurized by insurgent groups. Okay, wherever the democracy, they are being affected by insurgent groups, it becomes a policy of America to help them and to save their democracies. So this became Truman Doctrine. With this Truman Doctrine, they helped Greece, because fight were going on in Greece, and they were able to avert or defeat the communists. Okay, so this starts from 1947 in full scale. After this, they came up with one very famous plan. It is known as Marshall Plan. And Marshall Plan का एक specific aim था. The aim was, they realized communism works only in the where? When there is poverty and underdevelopment. So what they did under Marshall Plan, they give an aid of $13 billion for 4 years to Europe. Okay, and that led to the after war reconstruction. Now, since USA was now coming with full power to help the Western Europe, this was not liked by USSR, because USSR knew that if USA is going to stay there, it cannot increase its sphere of influence. Okay, so that's why USSR, it started the counter policies. All right, and these counter policies specifically included, like inka Marshall Plan, they came up with Warsaw Plan. Okay, they came up with blockades. Okay, so large number of these problems were started. Like, all of you know about Berlin Blockade? After Second World War, no resolution could be found on Germany. Just like the First World War, the main culprit was Germany. Okay, so suppose if this is Germany, Germany was divided into 4 parts. Okay, or all 4 victor powers. Then suppose this is Berlin. This Berlin was again divided into 4 parts. This part was under USSR. Alright, this part was under USSR, and because of these reasons, what they did, they closed the railroad links towards this part of Berlin. Okay, and this comes known as Berlin Blockade. Okay, so the large number of events are going to happen in the Cold War. All of you know about that Korean War from 1950 to 53. Then Vietnam War, okay, that is also part of it. Then there are some phases within the Cold War which we understand, like Thaw. Thaw was nothing but after the conclusion of Korean War, there was some kind of bonhomie in the relation, that is known as Thaw in the relation. Similarly, then we have the phase of Detente. This phase comes in 1962. In 1962, world was very clear to first nuclear war, that is Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, but this was somehow averted, and after that a phase of Detente came. By 1970s, the economy of USSR started underperforming. It was not having the steam to fight with USSR. Okay, so one more important event comes in 1979 when Afghanistan was invaded, and because of this the Cold War hostility again increased. In 1985, new president of USSR was elected. He was Mikhail Gorbachev. He came up with 2-3 new policies: perestroika, glasnost. Okay, perestroika means political and economic restructuring. Some reforms were done, and glasnost, as you know, openness. If you see China का कुछ भी पता चलता है? Is there any newspaper like The Hindu? And nobody knows, है ना? China Global, China Daily, and all of them, they are controlled by the state. So in general, there is no openness. So glasnost means openness. So all these policies, glasnost, perestroika, Uskorin means to accelerate the GDP, okay, in Russian. So all these policies, they were brought in by Mikhail Gorbachev, but the problem was there were 3 kind of people. Some were moderates or the conservatives, some were extremists, okay, and he was caught in the middle. He neither could satisfy the conservatives because they thought, why are you doing so much reforms? He could not satisfy the aspiration of the extremists. They're saying the reforms, they are not that much good enough. And this eventually led to the downfall. We'll discuss in detail how he was imprisoned, okay, house arrest में डाला गया था, and finally it led to a dissolution of USSR in 31st of December. वहाँ तक खत्म हो गया. Everything was done away with. All the satellite states, they went away. So this is the story of the Cold War, which starts. So all of the world history, if you see, all of this is connected. Okay, like First World War, Second World War. First World War का जो consequence है, one of the reason for the Second World War is that only Treaty of Versailles. Okay, similarly we have seen because of the rise of USA and USSR in the Second World War, finally that led to the beginning of Cold War politics. Okay, after that Cold War politics, one important event in Indian history as well as world history is creation of non-aligned movement. And what was the main aim? This was what which was asked by UPSC in this year. Very easy question. Why they did not want to join the bloc of either side, west or east? The main reasons we have already discussed. They did not want to become scapegoat. Like it happened to Korea. It happened to Vietnam. We can give examples. Alright, it happened to many other countries. It happened to even Pakistan. Pakistan ने सीएटो वगैरह ज्वाइन कर लिया था, है ना, सेंटो ज्वाइन कर लिया था. Because of these factors, they kept on fighting between west versus east. On the other hand, if you see India ने दोनों को बोला हम किसी की तरफ नहीं है. है ना, गिव अस PL 480, चावल दे दो, ठीक है, गेहूं दे दो. एंड सिमिलरली वी आल्सो हैड कंसेशंस विद द रशिया, फ्रॉम देयर वी वर एबल टू जनरेट आवर डिफेंस, है ना. सारा अपना डिफेंस कहां से आया? कम्स फ्रॉम we signed treaty with them also. So because of this, the third world, these countries wanted to focus on development. They wanted to stay away from the forces of neo-colonialism. We'll discuss about imperialism, colonialism, कल discuss करेंगे उसको अच्छे से. आज हम rest of the topics को cover करते हैं, ठीक है. So this is what the syllabus is all about. Then ये भी हमने बात कर लिया. What were the factors leading to the collapse of Soviet Union? The economy was responsible for it. Okay, economy became very slow. Like one of the biggest problem in communist economy. Do you understand that? What is the biggest problem? There is no motivation. There is no motivation. है ना? All the businessmen, they are fighting in capitalist because they know there is profit motive. If profit is not allowed, do you think they are going to work? No. 60 to 70% of the expenditure of communist country, this was on defense, and they were having the race with the USA. Because of these reasons, they did not have any kind of impact on specifically जो इतना human development का side है. That's why their country remained underdeveloped in comparison to USA. Okay, so these were the various factors responsible for this. Then we talk about the political changes. So from 1989 is an important year in the European history because from there we see the reunification of Germany. Okay, Berlin Wall, it's going to fall. Okay, it's going to fall from 9th of November 1989, and after that other countries like Poland, है ना, जितने भी important countries है, they are going to shed the control of communists. Okay, these are the important political changes which happened from 89 to 2001. Majority of these countries later on have signed treaties with European Union as well as NATO. Okay, and this is the reason, one of the reason, that's why we have the current Ukraine crisis, because Ukraine is the last country which is left and it wants to join NATO, and Putin says ऐसा नहीं होने देंगे. Okay, before that we are going to join you. All right, so this is what is happening in Europe right now. Now, end of the Cold War. With the end of the Cold War, it has also led to ascendancy in world. That is, there is only one superpower and it is USA, and it has been both good as well as bad for the world. That we need to understand. If we see the bad consequences, if you see all the international organization, who is dominating them? USA, and USA never accept their decisions. Like if you say Iraq war 2003, was there any kind of legitimacy? No, they just came and invaded. Similar, Afghanistan, eventually 20 years के बाद वापस चले गए, ठीक है. So we see that because of being lone superpower, nobody is able to check USA, and that has been detrimental for the world. Because of the loans, do you think why terrorism has increased in the world? Previously, USA and USSR used to fight. Now USSR went down. अब यूएसए अकेला है. अब इससे फाइट करने के लिए डायरेक्ट तो कोई कुछ कर नहीं सकता. सो दे ऑलवेज यूज द इनडायरेक्ट मेथड्स, एंड टेररिज्म इज वन ऑफ द मेथड्स टू मेक श्योर कि ये जो इनकी सुपर पावर है इसको compete कर सके, ठीक है. लाइक इफ यू सी द फाइट बिटवीन इंडिया एंड पाकिस्तान, व्हाई पाकिस्तान कीप ऑन फाइटिंग, व्हाई दे यूज टेररिस्ट? Because India has a very big army, very big GDP, etc. They cannot never compete with us. So they use terrorism as a means of foreign policy to make for the deficit that they have in other areas. ठीक है. This is the reason why terrorism has increased sharply from 1990 onwards. उसके पहले क्यों नहीं था इतना? The main reason, it was checked by either by USA and USSR. There were two specific powers, but with the going of USSR, terrorism has increased in the world because they have no other method. Like if you see Taliban, or if you see 9/11, why that happened? The main reason was this only. Okay, because there is no other power which can check the rise or the any kind of activities of USA, not even international organizations. Okay, so this is what we need to understand. UPSC has many times asked a question on this also, कि high US ascendancy has happened. Okay, and what is the impact of this lone superpower? All right, so this is where you need to improve. Then we see unification of Europe. Once Europe, it was divided in 1945, है ना. After the Second World War, it was divided into two blocks, East and West, है ना. दो पार्ट में डिवाइड कर दिया. From that also we see the humble beginning of Europe. Okay, initially they were a very small organization known as Benelux. Okay, it was a mixture of B for Belgium, NE for Netherlands, and Lux for Luxembourg. है ना? These were the three countries which created. Then afterwards it was joined by some other powers like Britain and France. उन्होंने उसको join कर लिया. Then they created European Steel Community. Then council बना लिया, and धीरे धीरे करके by 1991 they have signed the Maastricht Treaty, which led to creation of European Union. So there is a whole from 1945 all the way up to 1991. This is the phase which is known as the unification of Europe. So we discuss about post-war various foundation. In 1949, when there was blockade of Berlin, by Russia, at that point of time, Western power realized that they cannot fight with USSR without having an organization. So this organization was created in 1949, and this became North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Okay. Even before that, they had signed one treaty. It was known as Brussels Defense Treaty. This Brussels Defense Treaty did not include USA as well as Canada, all those countries. So this was redefined in 1949 and led to creation of NATO, European Community, consolidation, expansion, and finally creation of European Union. UPSC asks a lot of questions on the current state of European Union also. है ना, ये 2013 में पूछा था कि now this is the sick man of Europe. All right. The concept of sick man, all of you need to understand. Sick man is the word which is used for Ottoman Empire. It was declining in 18th and 19th century. In the middle of 19th century, telegram भेजा गया. ठीक है? This telegram was sent by Russia, and they said the sick man is dying and we should divide the inheritance. Okay, and this was not accepted by England. That's why after that word, whichever kind of weakness come in Europe, they use the phrase of sick man. The sick man of Europe. All right. Along with this, one theme is left in our specific discussion, that is imperialism and colonialism, and along with that the factor leading to underdevelopment. Okay. So that we'll discuss. Only one topic. These 2-3 topics we'll discuss today. That is revolution and counter revolution. Fascist जो counter revolution है, that is in not only Germany, also in Italy. In Italy, we see the rise of Benito Mussolini. And the same set of situations were there. Same, there was unstable government, inflation, all those problems. And Italy also suffered because they signed a treaty with Britain in 1915. Okay, and they thought that in Treaty of Versailles, they are also going to get some monetary benefit. But nothing was offered to Italy. The Prime Minister, Vittorio Orlando, he felt humiliated, went back to Italy. And that's how from 1919 onwards, we see unstable governments in Italy. And this was specifically resolved by the coming of fascist power. Fascist word is an Italian word. ठीक है ना, वहीं से आता है, है ना, fascism. ठीक है. In Germany we use the word Nazism. Okay. So there were different kinds of ideologies which were specifically emerging in whole of the world. Like right now, if you see after the economic crisis of 2008 to 2011-12, we have seen rise of right-wing powers throughout the world. Not only India, throughout the world, Europe, Hungary वगैरह में आप देख रहे हो, there is fighting going on. Okay, so there is rise of this right-wing power. Whenever there is economic crisis, we are going to see rise of right-wing. Same thing happened last century. Okay, in Germany as well as Italy, these were the right-wing specific governments. ठीक है. So this is what has happened. And now Russian Revolution. This Russian Revolution is very important from the point of view of So if we see Russia, Russia is the only country which did not have any kind of revolution till the beginning of 20th century. Okay, so this was the first Russian revolution. It failed. Then we have the second Russian revolution, and which is known as Bolshevik Revolution. The chain of revolution in Europe, it starts from French Revolution. Okay. Then we see other European revolution, 30, 48 we see in, again, after 48 we see unification of Germany and Italy, okay, and the last one to join the party was Russia. Okay, so it is often said that the beginning, this Russian revolution, it was the logical outcome of the chain of event which starts with French Revolution, because whole of the Europe, it was reshaped. Only country which was left outside the pale of the revolution was Russia, and this happened in 1905. At this point of time, okay, the people who were ruling over Russia, they were known as Tsar. है ना, and the name of the dynasty was Romanov dynasty. Okay, so this dynasty was ruling. The biggest problem as always वही सारी हैं घूम फिर के. रशिया की पूरी हिस्ट्री में सब सारी प्रॉब्लम स्टार्ट होती है लैक ऑफ फोकस ऑन कंज्यूमर गुड्स. Okay, so they are going to start with the bread rats. Okay, because of the firing which is going to happen. Anyway, so the context of the Russian Revolution, it starts because of the problems in their parliament is known as Duma. Some reforms were specifically told that these reforms are going to be done in the parliament. They were not done after 1905. Land reforms, they had failed. They had one specific person, Peter Stolypin. So he was enthusiastic about land reforms. They failed by 1911. Okay, so they were suffering. Okay, they were suffering in all means. Because of these reasons, all Russia wanted was stay away from war, because they were economically weak, one of the country where industrial revolution had not happened. Okay, so the only thing that they required was to stay away from war. Okay, because it was the war which precipitated the revolution in 1917. So this was the most backward country. Okay, Russia. But what were the chain of events? So this entered the, as we have already discussed, Serbia was attacked by Austria-Hungary. Mobilization was done by Russia. Okay, once they entered the war, and as all of you know, all the economic resources they get diverted, all the economic resources they were sent. All right, and because of this, Russian public started suffering. Okay, these peoples who were being sent to fight in the war, they were not even having proper guns, they were not having proper training. Okay, so majority of the fighters, they were coming back. Okay, and there were death of large number of soldiers. All right, so this affected the psyche of Russian people. What is happening in our country? Why are we so backward? This was the time when bread rats are going to happen in St. Petersburg. Okay, St. Petersburg. So that's why once the fighting was done, Tsar was deposed. Okay, उनको हटा दिया था by the beginning of 1917, and this happens in Feb. Okay, Russian Revolution है, it's a set of two revolution. First revolution was the sending off of Tsar. It's going to lead to creation of constitutional government, है ना? And this is going to happen under the leadership of Kerensky. Kerensky became the leader after the revolution in 1917. Kerensky also committed some mistakes. So what he did, when the army was losing, he sent even more army. It is known as June offensive. They were sent to the war, and again the Russian soldiers, they died, and on the large scale family started suffering. He did not care much about land reforms. Okay, he did not even consider to conduct the elections. Because of this reason, there was a kind of revolutionary situation. Okay, and in this revolutionary situation, we see the coming of Lenin. Lenin बैठते हैं ट्रेन में स्विट्जरलैंड से. It's time to go to Russia, and then he reaches. And the moment he reaches, his focus is on. He toppled the government of Kerensky. Okay, after that, they killed the family of Tsar, and this revolution is known as Bolshevik. There were two communist party in Russia. One was Bolshevik, other was Menshevik. Okay, so Bolshevik, they were considered as the hardcore communist. As Lenin, he was more or less influenced by the ideas of Karl Marx. He started and thought about creating a dictatorship of proletariat. Okay, so different question comes on Russian Revolution. One is with respect to the factor responsible for it, how it was a set of two revolutions. Two revolution वही दो part में, एक Feb में होता है, second comes in the October. Okay, so these are the two set of revolution. What were the various causes? What were the problems? What was the impact of the First World War on creating revolution in Russia? ठीक है, so all these factors you have to remember. In the long run, UPSC इस पे ज़्यादातर क्वेश्चन पूछता है from the specific point of how it led to the creation of condition for the Cold War. Okay, because for the first time world had seen a communist government. So that's why this government was not accepted by the European countries. The people who were fighting with the Bolsheviks, they were known as whites. They were sponsored by these European countries, and that's why there was a civil war of around 4 years in Russia from 1917 to 21. Somehow they were able to win, and in 1922 they established Soviet Union. And after that we see rise of important personalities like Stalin. Okay, and Stalin is going to be there till the end of Second World War. Okay, so UPSC asks a lot of questions ki how the revolution of 1917 or Bolshevik Revolution started the fight of winning heart and mind. Because never before in history there was a fight between capitalism versus something else. Capitalism has already developed in the last 2 centuries. है ना, पिछले 2 centuries से, all of us know from the middle of 18th century we see rise of industrialization. Okay, and it has continued till 1917 without any very big change. And this was the change where communism is going to come, and this communism is going to challenge the supremacy of capitalism. Okay, there is going to be no private property, all such important features which we have already discussed. But difference between capitalism and communism. Okay, in capitalism everything is under the control of the factors of production, under the control of entrepreneur. But in communism everything is owned by the state. So these two are completely different ideologies. Okay, so that's why from 1917 a fight starts between the heart and minds of people कि हमें क्या select करना है. On top of it, these communists, they enhanced their appeal by recognizing that they are against imperialism. Okay, from 1917 onwards they said we are against imperialism. And as you all of you know, at the time of Second World War, majority of the countries of the world, they were under one or the other colonial masters. Okay, and that's why they said whichever country is going to follow communism, we are going to support it. So that's how we see the beginning of the rise of fight between capitalism and communism. By 1940s, when the Second World War is going to happen, even USSR is going to become a world power, and that prepares the background for Cold War. Okay, so Russian Revolution is a very important topic which we discussed, even though very brief dimension हम इसकी बात करते हैं. Then comes Chinese Revolution. This Chinese Revolution occurs in a set of different kind of circumstances. In Russia, even though it was largely unindustrialized, there were some important industrial centers. But in China, there were no industrial center. It was most of a society based upon peasants. Okay, do you see the situation of Afghanistan? The early 20th century China was today's Afghanistan. The whole China was divided into warlords. Okay, at this point of time, we see rise of one important person. His name is Sun Yat-sen. Okay, so what he wanted, the Manchu dynasty, it was overthrown in 1911. So from 1912 onwards, Sun Yat-sen started becoming important in the politics of China. So he had 2-3 important rules. One, there should be democracy. One, there should be nationalism. And third, specifically, he thought about land reforms, because peasantry in China, they were not having that very good condition. So from 1912 till 1925, he lived. Okay, there was no big problem in China. In 1921, Mao he started the foundation of Chinese Communist Party. CCP came into picture. Okay. This specific Sun Yat-sen, okay, he had created the party known as KMP. Okay, so till 1925, when Sun Yat-sen was in power, both KMP as well as CCP, they were able to work together. After his death from 1927, Chiang Kai-shek, leadership of KMP went to him. KMP was a bigger party having more resources, army, etc. All it's under his control. This came under the control of Chiang Kai-shek. Okay, so from 1927 onwards, we are going to see a civil war. The civil war is going to be between KMP versus CCP. Okay, and this KMP is going to get support from Western powers, and this CCP is going to be under the leadership of Mao. So this is known as Chinese Civil War. Okay, the Chinese Civil War remains in action from 1927 till 36. Okay, in between it was stopped for a time because of the क्या हुआ था, Japanese invasion. उसको stop किया गया था कुछ time के लिए because Japanese invasion. Then they again joined hand. Then it again resumed after the defeat of Japan. So it is fought in two stages. Okay, all of you know about the Long March. Okay, this is one of the important event of the Chinese history. Okay, in this specifically what happened, all the communist leaders, they were being circled by the KMP. Okay, this party had circled them. So at this point of time, Mao thought time has come to engage with the overall masses of the China. Okay, so he starts this long march, and through this he was able to increase his popularity. Whichever area which came in contact with CCP, they promised about land reform, this, that, all that. Okay, that was done. So by 1945, they were able to become and have even more bases than KMT. Okay, so this is how we can see by 1945 this long march played an important role in the rise of Mao as a important leader. Okay, and by 1945 when the civil war again resumes, even USA is going to help the party of Chiang Kai-shek, but there were some weaknesses in the party of Chiang Kai-shek, and the biggest was their army was mercenary. They followed the policy of pump priming, means printing more notes, which led to inflation. They did not care about land reforms. Okay, above all, even the help which they got from the Western power, they did not use it effectively. So because of the weaknesses of this party as well as strength and character of CCP, which had now had the mass contact with the masses along with the promises of land reforms, etc. This led to the victory of Mao in 1949. Chiang Kai-shek, he is going to flee to Taiwan. Taiwan में आजकल क्या चल रहा है? So Chiang Kai-shek, he went to Taiwan. So in Taiwan, he is known as the father of the nation, very big nation. Okay, so he specifically went there, and Mao, as all of you know, as well as Zhou Enlai, these two became the important people, and they created People's Republic of China. 1st of October, this is considered as Chinese Revolution. Okay, so UPSC कभी कभार एक आधा क्वेश्चन ऐसा पूछता रहता है, sometimes on the strategy of Mao versus Lenin. Like there is one specific difference in between the society of Russia and China. In China, it was the peasant which became the main supporters of the revolution. But in Russia, it was more of the industrial class, but it was in some specific industrial centers, okay, like Moscow, St. Petersburg. That's where the Lenin found its mass base. So this is the difference between these two revolutions. When we say ki bhai, how world was now getting divided into capitalist and communist. Capitalist, majority of the countries. Here we see the countries which matter. These countries were changing into communism. And when UPSC asks question ki how it created a war between hearts and minds, this is how it is. Capitalist countries, they were going into, when China became communist, almost half of the world area, it became communist. So it became a very big challenge for USA. That's why USA increased its strategies, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा strategies बनाई which could work, but USA specifically failed in case of China. USA failed in case of North Korea, as well as failed in the case of Vietnam. Okay, so it is often said that the policy of containing communism in Southeast Asia by USA, it has been a complete failure. Okay, so ऐसे questions भी UPSC में आ जाते हैं where you have to analyze in what level we can see कहाँ का उन्होंने interfere करने की कोशिश किया and this failed. Similarly, USA also failed, as you know, in 1962 by they were trying to invade Cuba, है ना, क्यूबा के ऊपर काफी टॉपल करने की कोशिश किया. It did not happen. They also 1973 they also tried to topple communist government in Chile. Okay, there were some African countries also where communism was spreading, like Mozambique, etc., and that was also affected by the activities of USA. So this is what we study. World history में सबसे ज़्यादा जो main themes हैं हमारे लिए वो वहीं से start होते हैं. Start with enlightenment. After enlightenment we talk about the various important revolution. American Revolution on one hand, other is French Revolution. Once the French Revolution starts, after that we specifically discuss about its impact, and its impact can be seen in the rise of nationalism. After nationalism of 1830, 1848, two revolutions are going to happen. State building activity in Germany and Italy. Along with this, after this, we are going to see the beginning of world wars. World war starts, causes, consequences, emergence of two power blocks, then third alignment movement or third no alignment, finally UNO, and eventually we are going to go towards decolonization. Okay, because UNO was one which was focusing on decolonization, like why the majority of the countries they got independence from 1945 to 1960 in these 15 years. One of the major reason was the creation of UN. Okay, because it was focusing on independence of all the nations. Okay, rest we'll discuss tomorrow. Specifically we'll discuss about these topics. What is imperialism and colonialism? We'll discuss कि उसका मतलब क्या होता है, how these important powers they were able to create. There are four concepts, which you should also try to get clarity. There are four concepts: imperialism, then new imperialism, then colonialism, and finally neo-colonialism. These four concepts we should understand. In world history, UPSC often asks questions on them, and if your concept is not correct, पूरा question गलत हो जाएगा, because there is a big difference between these two. Alright, so this concept we'll discuss. We'll also discuss about the countries, how they face, like Southeast Asia. All of you know Southeast Asia. So Vietnam, which was under the control of French, Indonesia under the control of Dutch. If we see Latin America, इसमें Brazil was under the control of Portuguese, rest of the countries under control of Spain, South Africa under Britain, same Australia under Britain. Once Britain lost America in 1783, it tried to increase its strength in India by Pitt's India Act 1784. Simultaneously, they also were able to identify Australia, and they started their main, you can say, journey towards Australia. So Australia was also colonized, and the first area was Sydney. We'll discuss about that also. We'll discuss about what is imperialism free trade, what is neo-imperialism. All right. Then after that we'll discuss about the liberation movement, like what was the role of Simon Bolivar. Simon Bolivar, he is going to be very important in Latin America. Similarly, during the time of Cold War, Egypt is going to become very famous in the Arab world. All of you know about Suez Canal crisis. So all that crisis happened during the specific part of two important personalities. We'll read about them. Okay. Then Africa in itself. Africa was granted little, you can say, self-rule by 1910. Okay. After 1910 specifically, by 1948, they were able to formulate a policy known as apartheid. It was the government of D.F. Milan. We'll discuss what is apartheid. Apartheid in general means complete separateness. दोनों लोगों को अलग-अलग रख के रखना, and that is on the basis of race. है ना? Blacks and whites, they should not be mixed. Then we'll discuss about Vietnam and what are the factors which have been responsible for decolonization and why some of the areas like Latin America and Africa, they are even underdeveloped today. This year UPSC asked one question on Latin America. ज़्यादा बड़ा नहीं पूछा, but factors आपसे पूछ लिए कि what were the factors responsible for underdevelopment, कि why after years of monopoly of colonialists as well as foreign intervention, they have not been able to develop. Africa पे 2018 में आ चुका है. So these are the topics of world history. If we see overall, it's very easy, but first you need to understand every topic. Like this year when they ask question on that roaring 20s, that you can only do if you can understand the syllabus कि हाँ ठीक है, it is a consequence of World War I. So from there you can align with it and you can eventually discuss. ठीक है. कल हम remaining part जो बचा है imperialism, colonialism, liberation, that we will discuss. Okay. Rest we have had a broad overview of majority of the topics. What I want from your side, ki you should, those of you who have not seen the first two lectures, you should go and watch it. Okay. You should just see क्या क्या important topics हमने बात किया, because when we'll start the class from 3rd of October, main classes will start from 3rd of October. You should have some idea, even though we'll start very slowly again with the ideas of enlightenment, this and that, but have some basic ideas by then. All right. That's why I'm taking these NCERT classes, and these classes are going to help you in having a bit of story. कम से कम अगली बार जब Russian Revolution बोलेंगे, Chinese Revolution बोलेंगे, you'll have some idea. हाँ, okay, who is the personality related to this revolution? Okay. So we'll meet tomorrow at the same time. Ritik Arjun Dev NCERT is good only for basics. Okay, that is all right. You can read the story of civilization also. There are 2 books, few important chapters there, so that also you can see.